Rosh Hashanah, the rapture of the church, in the twinkling of an eye. Hey folks, everything new under the sun. We're going to discuss today Rosh Hashanah, and it's happening this year. It happens every year, but in the year 2023, September 17th starts. September 15th goes through September 17th, and that is the day known to the Jews as the day is the a festival where no man knows the day or the hour. It requires two witnesses to see a sliver of the new moon, and that's why they say the day where no man knows the day or the hour. Isn't it interesting? The Bible uses the same phrasing about the rapture of the church, the taking away of the bride of Christ. We're going to go in depth here and talk about the Jewish wedding tradition and as it relates to the rapture of the church. And this is a high watch period, September 15th, coming up in a couple of days here to September 17th. High watch period. I think the rapture will be during this holiday, although I don't know which year it will be. I think we're maybe about 3 years out from the rapture happening there. But every time this comes around, this is a high watch period. Pattern equals prophecy. Pattern is prophecy. The Western mind views prophecy merely as a prediction and fulfillment. The Jewish mind saw prophecy as a pattern being recapitulated. So being reimagined, being put in place again, being used again in some way. Maybe not exactly, but if there's a pattern, then that could be prophecy. So just like the days of creation were 24-hour days, and that's what Genesis 1 confirms, likewise, you could probably split up each 1,000 years of the history of man into a 24-hour period. So that's what I kind of do here. Remember, 2 Peter 3:8 says, 1 day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is as 1 day. So if that's the case, and we have about a 24-hour day, then you could break up each section into a 24-hour period. So the start of the 1,000 years would be 12 a.m. or midnight, and then you would go into 6 a.m. plus, or around 6 a.m., 7 a.m. That's the morning, because the morning and the night don't happen the same every day. It kind of fluctuates between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. maybe, depending on when the sun is coming up, and of course everybody knows that changes. But kind of generally, 6 a.m. is the morning. And then, of course, you have noon, which is 12 p.m. And then you have 6 p.m., and that's when the evening starts. And the Jews recognize the start of the new day from the evening, from 6 p.m. Through to the 6 p.m. the next day, whereas the Western mindset recognizes it from midnight to midnight. So from the Western mindset, the new day starts at midnight tonight. The new day, it would flip over into the new day. And so you can break each 1,000 years into kind of the hours in a day, if you will. And it's interesting because there's some terminology, some text which describes the Lord, or at least the groom in the parable of the 10 virgins, as coming at midnight. And there's various references to midnight and moving into a new day. So let's take a look at this. Again, this is just a real quick look at it, and you tell me what you think. So on the right-hand side, that's the parable of the 10 virgins from Matthew 25. And it says, verse 5, while the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. Are we all slumbering and sleeping? I think you could say that for a lot of the church. Verse 6 says, and that's the highlighted section, and at midnight there was a cry made. Is that like the trumpet? When the trumpet blows? It's kind of like Rosh Hashanah. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him, it says. Now, if we skip down to verse 13, watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. But the parable up above in verse 6 says midnight. Now, is that just because the parable says midnight and that has nothing to do? I think there's a clue there. Remember, midnight is not necessarily an exact time. So let's look at this. On the left-hand side, this is from chabad.org. Before the exodus from Egypt, God told Moses that he would deliver the final blow to the Egyptians. The plague of the firstborn happened exactly at midnight. The Zohar explains that midnight also became the defining moment of freedom for the Jews. Will midnight become the defining moment of freedom for the church, for the believers, for the faithful? Pattern equals prophecy, right? So if it's happened before for the Jews at midnight, then likely that timeline would be similar. I think that's why we see in the parable of the 10 virgins midnight there. And although they did not physically leave until the next morning, they became spiritually free exactly at the moment of midnight. So something interesting there. Analysis of this concept highlights an interesting difficulty. Time is constantly moving. An exact moment of midnight doesn't actually exist, right? So when is midnight exactly? It doesn't actually exist. Any moment of time, no matter how small, belongs either to the first or the second half of the night. There's no in between, basically. There's no a time between the 2 days. As soon as the first half of the night ends, the second has already begun. There is no moment that exists in between the two. Is that why the Bible describes the rapture as the twinkling of an eye? Let me just go to that scripture reference there, and that is out of 1 Corinthians 15:52. And that says, in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable and will be changed. So in the twinkling of an eye is that kind of a moment in time that doesn't really exist in the twinkling. It happens so fast. It's not at one day or the other. Does midnight actually exist? That's kind of the question there. But 1 Corinthians 15:52 says, in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. And what are the trumpets related to? Well, Rosh Hashanah is that interesting festival that has not occurred yet. Rosh Hashanah, you go down to the fifth item there. So the first 4 feasts were fulfilled through Jesus directly. I believe he's going to come and fulfill the last 3 feasts as well. Rosh Hashanah, the righteous will sound trumpets. Remember, in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, the dead in Christ will be raised imperishable. The righteous will sound trumpets and announce Jesus' second coming as Messiah and King. This is all happening at Rosh Hashanah. Remember that Rosh Hashanah traditionally is also the festival where no man knows the day or the hour, because it requires 2 witnesses to spot a sliver of the new moon before they have to both agree before they can declare that Rosh Hashanah has begun. So it's the festival where no man knows the day or the hour. Verse 13, watch there, for ye know, at the bottom right. For ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man comes. That kind of sounds like the festival of Rosh Hashanah, where no man knows the day or the hour. The witnesses, it could start over a 2-day or over a 48-hour period, a 2-day period. No man knows. And when they see that for the first slice of moon, then they can declare that the new moons have been spotted and the festival can begin. So no man knows the day or the hour, but it comes at midnight. So when is midnight? Well, it's an indistinguishable time. We don't really know it. It's a time that doesn't really exist, between 2 days, right? Just as the section on the left-hand side speaks to. So you have this mysterious midnight time where this occurs. Interesting to note to Westerners also is that midnight defines a switch from a day, one day into the new day. So does this catching away happen at the end of 6,000 years, going into the millennial reign of Christ? Or, as the Jews understand it, is midnight already partway into the millennial reign of Christ? Because to Jews, the evening, the new day starts at 6 p.m. So if the new day starts at 6 p.m., then by midnight, whenever that time is, we're already into the millennial reign of Christ. And so there's some interesting text related to that as well. I wonder if I can find it. There's scriptures relating to, let's see. So in Revelation 6, the seals are broken. The seals are completed in Revelation 6:12. Behold, when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black, and as sackcloth of night, and the moon became as blood, and the stars fell upon unto the earth, rather. So the sun goes black. This is a turning point. This is the time's up moment. This is what I've said prior. And then you go down to verse 17. For the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? So does the wrath actually happen during the millennial reign of Christ, during that last 1,000 year period? So after the 6,000 years of man, then the wrath comes. So I suggest to you that maybe the seals happen in the last 3.5 years of the 6,000 year period, and then we flip over. The abomination of desolation happens at the last moment of the 6,000 years, and then in the new day, in the millennial reign of Christ, this is the great day of his wrath. That last 24-hour period, that last 1,000 years, a day of the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like a day. Now the day of wrath is here after the 6 seals are completed. So on the timeline, if we understand that, then the seal judgments, or rather the seals specifically, I don't believe they're judgments, but the seals occur, and maybe that's the switchover. Maybe this 7-year period spans that 6,000 year mark. Maybe that 7-year period spans that. And that is exactly what Kent Hovind actually he believes. He believes that there is a crossing over across that 6,000 year timeline, where the first 3.5 years happens, and then there's wrath of God after that 6,000 year timeline, where it speaks of the wrath of God, the great day. Isn't the millennial reign of Christ, isn't that the great day of the Lord? It says the great day of his wrath is come. And again, I go into looking at where the sun and the moon go dark. And so these are all passages, Joel 2, and then Matthew 24, Mark 13, in each of the columns, and then Revelation 6 and Acts. And in the red text, you can see the earth shall quake before them, the heavens shall tremble, the sun and the moon go dark. So in each of the red verses you see in those columns, this is where the sun and the moon go dark. So that's a timeline. That's a changeover. It says the book of the Lord, the book of Revelation rather, describes the day of the Lord as an apocalyptic time of God's almighty wrath, which comes upon those who are deemed wicked. The text pictures every man hiding in rocks of the mountain during an earthquake to attempt to hide from God's wrath, while celestial phenomenon turn the moon red and the sun dark. Now, again, when you look at the Lord's day, the day of the Lord, the sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the great and notable day of the Lord. What does the day of the Lord mean to Christians? Well, the Lord's day is a Christian's day of worship. It's when we come together and we come to worship God. We come to learn about God and to hear from him. The Lord's Day equates the day of the Lord with the Lord's Day, which is usually taken to refer to the Christian weekly day of rest. So this Lord's Day seems to indicate that the last 1,000 years, the millennial reign of Christ, has a part at the beginning where the Lord cleanses and brings judgment to the planet. And this is all part of the beginning of the Lord's Day. Because remember, at the end of the millennial reign of Christ, the millennial reign of Christ is not all peace and awesomeness. It is in sort of a way. But the beginning starts with the wrath of God, potentially. And the end does, apparently, according to the Bible, end with wrath and a great battle, a battle of Armageddon, right? So it's not all peaceful. So it would make sense that the beginning would be God cleaning up stuff after the last 6,000 years as humans have messed up the world. So the beginning of the millennial reign of Christ starts with the cleaning up and the wrath of God to a point where he's ruling and reigning. And then it ends again with the great battle of Armageddon. Again, wrath of God and dealing with the sin in the world. So to me, that scripture does line up with the suggestion that, in fact, the 7-year period straddles somewhere that 6,000 year period. Where does that put us for the timeline? Well, I don't know. That could mean we actually have maybe another 3.5 years before this 7-year period starts, and if that 7-year period straddles. Now, there's different understandings of that, but I want to open your eyes to the possibilities, and I'm explaining to you what I think is occurring. That would mean that the rapture of the church, the taking away of the saints, these describe, the parable of the 10 virgins, these describe the taking out at the midpoint of the tribulation, which I still believe to be the case, but the midpoint of the tribulation actually comes at the 6,000 year mark and at midnight. Again, when you look at 6,000 years, if you overlay the 24-hour day, the midnight occurs at the end of 6,000 years, not sometime prior to it. All right, so and that's what the Jews understand as well. Their new day starts at 6 p.m., which is interesting, but their midnight still happens at the same midnight as us, that time in the middle of the night when it's dark, where you switch over somewhere around 11 p.m. to 12:30, whenever midnight occurs based on the sun down and sun up timelines at the midpoint between sundown and sun up, right? Which fluctuates a little bit, as we know. So you look at that midnight reference, remember, pattern equals prophecy, and it seems to me that this, at least if this is any clue at all, that this would indicate that he's going to come at midnight. We don't know exactly when midnight occurs because we don't know exactly when the sun's going to go down every day. Well, actually, we can calculate that by the cycles of the moon and the sun and the spinning of the rotation of the earth. We can calculate that now into the future. But it says we don't know the day or the hour, and that's because it relates to the Rosh Hashanah, the witnessing of the new moons. And because that midnight time fluctuates, and even, again, according to the Jews, really there is no midnight because time is constantly moving. The exact moment of midnight doesn't exist. You're in one day or you're in the other day. So very interesting, kind of a mystical extra dimension of time there where this occurs. But I think the Bible, and there's other locations as well, which I may add to this understanding, but there's other locations which seem to give us a clue as to when this rapture of the church, when the taking away of the saints occurs. And so I hope that opens your eyes a little bit, gives you some things to think about. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I definitely will add to my patterns and the understanding of midnight and maybe more of the timing of the event as we look into this further. But thanks for watching. I'll continue to expand on this as we go. And yeah, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you agree with that? Do you believe it? I'm interested to hear your opinions. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting. As always, we'll see you folks in the next video.